Okay, welcome back. What we're going to do in this particular video is show you how to import data into Eviews from specifically Microsoft Excel. Now, if you recall in the very introduction, I showed you this particular Excel spreadsheet which actually has economic data coming from the Republic of Fiji. Our objective in this video is to import this data into Eviews. And you'll see it's surprisingly straightforward. So what I've got in front of you is, firstly, I've opened up the directory or the folder that contains the Excel spreadsheet, and I've highlighted it using the mouse. So basically I just clicked on it in order to, and it's called, it's just an Excel sheet called with the name of Fiji. And to the right of you at the bottom of the screen, you should be seeing essentially the Eviews, the basic Eviews interface. And obviously there's nothing going on in that interface, and what I'm going to do now is try and import that Fiji Excel spreadsheet into Eviews. Now it's surprisingly straightforward because all you have to do, there's many ways in doing this, but perhaps the easiest way is simply to drag the Excel sheet directly into the command area. And if you do that, Eviews is clever enough to pick up that it's an Excel file that's being dropped onto the Eviews work area. And what it will do immediately is read the Excel sheet and try and interpret the time series matrix in that sheet. And you can see here is that the first thing it's doing, and it's kind of, you should take a pause here and just think about, just watch, just read what it's actually saying to you. And let me just turn on the highlight. Now notice it's telling you what the base sheet is, and in this case it's the Fiji data. It's called the sheet called Fiji, and immediately it's tried to pass the Excel sheet into economic data. And you can see here it's giving you an indication down below basically of how it's doing that. And so the predefined range is the Fiji spreadsheet, indicating the range that it worked out in terms of where the data starts and ends. Sometimes it's not so clever. In this case, it was actually working out exactly where the time series matrix begins and ends, and that it had labels in the very first row and dates down the very first column. So that's nice. So we just keep pressing next. And it's pretty obvious that Eviews has already picked up that it's sort of passed successfully what's going on in that spreadsheet. So we can continue to press next, and finally it's telling you that this is how it's going to interpret the sheet, and it looks pretty clear. It's telling you that the identifier series for the dates is called date, which is correct. Gives you the names of the series at the top, which are obviously correct, and you can scroll to the right using the mouse quite easily. Scroll down to get a sense of whether it's actually read the data correctly, and it's all looking very good. And the next option is simply to press finish. Link imported series and alpha objects to external source. That's complicated language to simply say, do you want to always link your data to the Excel sheet so that if you change data in the Excel sheet, it actually automatically changes in Eviews? I wouldn't recommend that at this stage, so we're going to break that link because we want to just keep a copy of the file in there so that for replication purposes. So we'll press no, and you'll see immediately that what's happened here is that Eviews has created for you a work file called Fiji. Remember, we started off with nothing, but it basically decided to create a work file for you called Fiji with a range starting from 1970 to 2020, which reflects essentially the range in the Excel sheet, and an active sample from 1970 to 2020. So let me just highlight that area. Sorry to pause a bit, but that's this area here. So that's the work file. Notice also in this area, and I'll give a 2 here just to make it clear, is that it's given you the command necessary to basically import that Excel sheet using the command line. Now I've got to get rid of the indicators there to highlight it, but you see it gets very complicated, but that's very useful because you immediately start to get an idea of how you can actually replicate this command very quickly using Eviews. Now, okay, so it seems to have imported the data. the next question is, has it actually done it correctly? Well, to do that, what you need to do is examine the data that's been put into the work file. Now, you'll notice here, relative to what we started with, an empty work file, we actually seem to have more objects in the work file area. The page file is called Fiji, but we still have the C, and we still have the residual, right, or the resid object. But now we actually have additional objects, which are called series, in which we should find the data that was originally in the Excel spreadsheet. Now, the one that we're familiar with probably is the real GDP of Fiji. And if you open up this area here, you'll see that basically what it's done is imported, seemingly correctly, the real GDP data of Fiji and indicated the dates associated with each value. Now, it turns out that what you really should do at this stage is reopen up or open up your Fiji Excel spreadsheet and start to compare the numbers to make sure that it did an appropriate job, because sometimes it may not. It can get easily confused or do the wrong thing, but it looks pretty good at the moment in the sense that the numbers are lining up. You can see that the Excel value of real GDP Fiji is is actually equivalent basically to the data recorded in Eviews. Now, if you work your way all the way down, you'll see that at 2013 we're expecting a value of 5.2563, and if we work our way down in Excel, fortunately we get the equivalent number there. Now, you should do that for every series in this Excel, in the time series matrix, just to confirm that it's been imported correctly. I won't go through that for this particular video, but I can assure you that the data has been brought in correctly. So that's essentially how we import data into Excel. I just want to point out one little thing, that sometimes your data might be transposed. Not to worry, because actually, if you notice, if I just restart this process and let me get rid of the command capture and close all the objects up here. So what I did is press Window, close all objects in an attempt to basically start over, and I'm going to clear the capture window by right-clicking on it. What I'm going to do now is start off with an Excel sheet where the data is essentially transposed, and I'll just show you that it's not much of a problem for Eviews. If I simply take the same spreadsheet and drag it across, once again now the default spreadsheet is Fiji data transposed, and now it's showing to you that the data is obviously transposed in the view screen. But what you need to do, click here, is just read the series by row. Notice here at the bottom there's an option to read the series by row, and if I do that, immediately what happens is that Eviews transposes the data for you and gives you a view, a normal view, and then we can simply go right across and let it finish. We don't want to link it, and immediately, once again, it imports the data correctly, creates the work file, and if you click on Fiji, you'll see essentially that it's imported the data as before. So Eviews has very powerful importing facilities, and not just from Excel. We're going to focus on Excel for this particular module, but just encourage you to learn a little bit about the power, its abilities to import files from many different foreign data sources. So thank you. That's demonstrating how to get data into Eviews from Excel.